Hey guys, how are you doing? My name is Zakir, and today we are going to take a look at a subject that may be confusing to some of you, called recursion. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start with a simple recursion just to get the hang of it, and once you do, you can progress to more advanced practices, and also I'll add to the channel in future more advanced ones, but first we continue with something which is very basic. We'll start with something which is basic. So what I want to do in my method, in my recursive method, is to return the sum of an array, of an integer array. So let's first create this array here. Let's call it nums, and just populate it with random numbers, which we're going to return eventually the sum of it with the help of the following method. So I'm going to create my my method, and it's going to return an integer. I'm going to call it sum, and going to take in an integer array. Let's call it A. Okay, so my method is ready. Now, when you want to work with, when you want to do this with a for loop, it's pretty easy. What you're going to do is that you create a for loop, and you iterate through the array. And with every iteration, what you're going to do is basically you could have like a sum value, and every time you add to the sum what you have in the array at index I. Okay, in A, sorry, at index I. So it adds to the sum every time and the sum of it, and then eventually after the for loop ends, you can return the sum. So that works. Now we're going to do the same thing with recursion, right? In recursion, we can't have loops. So therefore we're going to call the method again and again and again. And now what's going to happen is basically every time we're going to call it, we want to use this kind of this iterator basically to progress through the array. Eventually it will reach length, it will reach the end of it. So basically it would start from 0, go all the way 0, 1, 2, 3, it goes all the way to array.length, which is already the outside of the array. Okay, because if you remember, the index count start from 0. So basically, let's see, this array size is 9, right? Yeah, it's 9. So basically the size is 9, but since we start from 0, it goes from 0 till 8. So the last element here is going to be at index 8. So basically we're going to run the iteration from 0 till length, which is 9 minus 1. Okay, so in other words, as long as I is less than a.length, like we've written here. Okay, and this is the progression that we are making. And every time we are going to insert to sum the what's in the index I, because every time with every iteration, the first one is 0, the next one is 1, 2, 3. With every iteration we are going to insert it, add it up to sum. Eventually we're going to return sum. Okay, now with that in mind, we'll make it recursively. So what I want to do in order to help me making this task is to add another variable here. I'll call it I. I'll get in also another integer variable, which will help me iterate through the array, because you'll need to be able to advance and progress to other elements in the array. And in order to do that, you can't just take an array as a parameter. You can't really do anything if the situation was that you only got an array. Okay, you can't really progress it because the recursive method is going to repeat itself and not going to commit any changes. So the way to make those changes is by using those parameters to advance things. Okay, so And what we're going to do, as you may know, you might know, you might not know, I don't know. The first things that you need to write inside the recursion is the end case, the case that makes this method calls end. Because every time you call the method again and again and again, and eventually you need to end it somewhere, at some point. So you can write it here, but sometimes you don't want to start with it. You want to start with the call maybe. Intuitively, whatever makes you feel more comfortable. You can start with the end case if you know it. If you don't know it, you can just start with the loop, kind of 4 things that you know intuitively to the code, and then it would come up, okay? So let's basically start this way. Let's start with the method call. So we're going to call the same method that we're in, sum. We're going to pass always the same array, and we're going to progress every time I plus 1 to the next step. Now, let's see the method call from here. From the main, if I'll call this method, I'll call it this way. I'll pass in nums and 0. So, and I'll make this method static, so I can call it this way. Okay, so I called it and initialized the I to be 0. So the index starts at 0, and every time this index is going to call the method again and again and again with 1 plus, 1 plus, 1 plus, 1 plus. Starts from here, let's say, and goes all the way to here until it reaches the end case, which is length. So let's write our end case at the beginning. If I has reached a.length. That's the end case, and what we want to return here is, as we have to return an integer type, we're going to return a 0. Why? Because it progresses on and on and on, and until it gets to the end, and then when it gets to the end case, we return 0. So basically, this 0 is not going to affect anything. It's pretty neutral. It's not going to make any changes. So basically, we return 0, and on the return side of things, what we want to do every time that we return to the previous call. So let's say we reached to the end and we returned a 0 to the previous call. The previous call was that. I'm going to make it larger a little bit, easier to see. And it will bring back 0 to here, and then it will return to here, and then it will add the sum of that, and add to here, add the sum of that, and so on. Eventually, it will return the sum of all the elements in the array, and we're going to see that in action, basically. So on the call stage, we're just going to do this, basically. We're just going to call the method every time with an I index, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and until we reach the end case. At the return, we're going to do the calculation of adding what's in the index, the current index, to the returned value. Okay, so you could imagine the returned value as something that you don't see. You can manipulate it, or you could return it as it is. Depends what your task is. In here, every time, with every step that I'm returning, so return to here, I'm adding this index to the returned value. Then returning to here, and adding this index to the return value. And the same goes to all the rest of the numbers until I'm reaching, until I'm unfolding all the methods, the method calls. Okay, so this is the calls part, which does nothing besides iterate the I to make it go to the end and then return the base case. Now, what we're going to combine now in the same row is the word return, and we're going to take A and put whatever is at index I plus whatever is returned. Now this is confusing, and I'm going to explain how it works. At the beginning, what happens is we're going to pass in the nums and 0. So it comes to here, this condition doesn't happen. Okay, so we continue. Now, you see in this row, you have you have kind of a complicated sentence. You have a method call, and you have something else. You have a returned value. Now, whenever this happens, it always goes to the method call first. So the first stage, we are going to just ignore all of the left side and just going to go and run this method. So now I is at index 1, and then we'll do the same again. We're going to come in to the second iteration, and we ignore all this side and go and pass in to the next method call I plus 1. So this is now 2, and then 3, 4, 5, and then goes on until the end. Now this is all the recursive calls that have been made from 0 till the end. When it reaches the end, it returns 0. So that 0 got returned to here, to this method call. And basically, every time you call a method, and when the method returns a value, it returns to the method call itself. So the last call was happening from here. So this call, let's say this call at the end was made I to be at length. Then it got returned 0. So that 0 returned to the same call that previously had made it come to the length. Okay, so now it's here. And now this 0 comes back to basically the same place it's been called from. So that 0 comes back from here. And so we are here right now at this method call. And we are going to return again, since we are now F0, and then we complete the rest of the line now. So 0 plus whatever is at index I. So also when we are folding the method calls, we're also coming back to the state of variables that they were in. So at this state, the variable was, let's see, we have 9, so index 8. So at index 8 plus 0, so it returns 6 to the returned value. Okay, remember the returned values that we don't see? Okay, so that 6 is returned, and when we got a return, we are following another method call, so now we are here. And that 6 is being returned to here. Remember in here previously there were the method calls, it looked like this. Now it returns that 6 previously had been returned from the memory to here. And now we are adding whatever is at index I, so 13. So so basically we're returning 19 again, and we go to here again. That 19 comes back to here, and plus this value, so 63, and so on until we get to the result. And we see that it works. So we are going to run it, and first, before I'm going to run it, I'm going to print what the result is, because I don't want the result to just be floating in space. I want it to be printed out. Okay, so that's the returned value, and that's it. So the practice works, and try it yourself. Try to follow it and understand. Just remember that this method call happens at the beginning, and then when we get to the return part, we're starting returning to the method calls. We're returning the values to the method calls again and again, and adding to the current index until we get the result. So, hope it was clear, and if you have any questions, please comment down below, and thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next tutorial.